Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Mohammed Layiq Sediqi, the father of Holophase. Part 74. The final walk up the infinite tree. Remember the language we are learning. There is one field, phi, the holophase, one continuous cyclic movement from which all of reality unfolds. When phi begins to change, its first derivatives appear, and with them the three dimensions show themselves at once. Time as omega, space as k, and motion as v, built from both. Every higher derivative is a finer question about how phi changes, and each one casts three shadows together: a time shadow, a space shadow, and a motion shadow. These echoes mix and weave into one another, forming the patterns we call fields, particles, bodies, thoughts, and worlds. In this picture, everything that exists is a living tapestry of phi, endlessly echoing through its derivatives and their dimensional shadows. Today, we walk slowly through that tapestry one last time. We have reached a gentle, solemn point in our journey through Episode 7. Up to now, we have been climbing, sometimes urgently, sometimes with intense focus, building tools, definitions, and new kinds of understanding. We have learned to read the universe like a text, to translate reality between everyday language and the deep language of phi. We have even written our first complete sentence together. Now our task is different. Now we are here to walk, to see the whole landscape from root to canopy, to feel the unity of everything we have learned. This is not an exam. This is a final, contemplative walk up the infinite tree. I invite you to imagine that we are standing at the base of a colossal tree. Its roots go deeper than sight. Its trunk disappears into a canopy that seems to merge with the sky. This tree is not made of wood. It is made of derivatives. Every branch is a question about how phi changes. Every leaf is a specific answer. As we walk, I will name the main paths, but our deeper purpose is to feel how they fit together as a single living structure. We begin in quiet darkness, not emptiness, but potential. This is the root of the master tree, phi itself. Here, nothing is yet moving. There is no before or after, no here or there, no faster or slower. There is only the possibility that things could be different. Phi is defined at every point of the universe, but at this level, we are not yet asking how it varies. We are only acknowledging that it is there, that there is a field, a continuous something, from which all stories can be written. At this root, phi has shift symmetry. If you add the same constant to phi everywhere, nothing observable changes. No clock ticks differently, no distance stretches, no motion alters. This tells us something profound. The absolute value of phi is not what carries physical meaning. What matters is how phi changes. The root is like a blank page. The page is real and essential, but you do not learn the story by staring at the paper. You learn it by tracing the ink that will soon appear on it. From this silent root, we take our first step upward, into the realm where change begins. As we climb, the trunk splits into great first-order branches. These are the first derivatives, the first questions we can ask about phi. One branch asks, how does phi change in time? Another asks, how does phi change across space? A third asks, how does that change itself propagate? These questions give birth to omega, to k, and to v. On the time branch lives omega, the local ticking rate of reality. Omega answers, right here and right now, how fast is phi turning? It is the heartbeat of every oscillation, the tempo of every process. On the spatial branch lives k, the gradient. K answers, as I move from here to there, how quickly does phi's value rise or fall? It is the slope of a hill, the sharpness of a boundary, the intensity of a contrast. On the motion branch lives V, built from omega and k. V answers, given how phi changes in time and space, how does this pattern move? in what direction, at what speed, and along what path. These first order branches are like the thick limbs of a massive tree. They are strong, load bearing, and easy to see. Most of classical physics lives here. Constant velocity motion, simple diffusion, uniform stretching and compression. All of these can be written mostly in the grammar of first derivatives. If phi were a story, this is the level where we learn that something exists, where it is, and that it is moving. But the universe does not stop at motion. As we keep walking upward, the branches split again. Now we enter the second order realm, where the tree becomes more expressive, more subtle. From omega grows alpha, the acceleration. From k grows curvature. From v grow divergence, convergence, shear, and twist. These new branches ask questions not just about change, but about change of change. Alpha asks, is the rate of change itself increasing or decreasing? It tells us if a car is speeding up or slowing down, if a planet is being pulled inward or flung outward, if a heartbeat is quickening under stress or relaxing in calm. Curvature asks, is the gradient itself bending? It tells us where fields have peaks and valleys, where lenses focus or defocus light, where spacetime itself bends around mass. Divergence asks, is the flow spreading out or collecting? Shear asks, are neighboring layers sliding past each other? Twist asks, is the flow curling into vortices and spirals? At this level, we see why time, space, and motion cannot really be separated. A curved spatial pattern produces accelerations. Changing velocities create new gradients. Rotations in motion produce stable structures in space that persist in time. The three echoes are now tightly woven. This is the level where oscillations become possible, where orbits close, where waves form and carry information across the universe. We walk further, and the branches divide again and again. Third-order derivatives appear. Jerk in time, the rate at which acceleration itself changes. In space, we find variation of curvature, the fine modulation of shapes, the texture of surfaces. Mixed derivatives tell us how time rates vary across space and how spatial patterns evolve in time. A wave packet dispersing in water, a crack spreading through a material, a twitch in a muscle, the onset of turbulence in a flow, these all demand higher-order questions to be fully understood. Higher still, we reach towers of derivatives that few people ever name. In practice, we usually compress them. We say, this is a complicated response, or this system is highly sensitive, when underneath those words is a whole cluster of third, fourth, and fifth order structure. The infinite tree reminds us that those patterns are not mysterious decorations. They are organized pieces of the same grammar, more detailed questions about how phi behaves when pushed, pulled, stretched, twisted, and perturbed. As we walk, we notice something beautiful. Not all branches are independent. Some meet again, forming loops of structure. Out of derivatives, the universe builds special global patterns. One such pattern is topology. Somewhere in the tree, across many levels, vortices appear, spinning structures that cannot be undone without cutting. Domain walls form, boundaries between regions where phi takes different typical values. Knots, braids, defects, and solitons emerge. These topological structures are like punctuation in the cosmic text. Exclamation marks, question marks, commas that never move, even as the local details of the sentence flow around them. Another global structure arises from fixed relationships between omega and k, dispersion relations. When omega and k are linked in a simple, lawful way, waves can form and persist. Sound in air, light in vacuum, ripples on a pond, quantum wave functions in a potential well. All of these are special sentences that the Holophase grammar loves to repeat. They are like common phrases in a language, patterns that show up again and again because they are simple, stable, and expressive. Underneath all of this branching and weaving, there is a deeper rule that guides which stories are actually told and which remain only possible. This rule is the principle of balance. In the language of physics, it appears as conservation laws and as the principle of least action. In the Holophase language, it says that the universe prefers histories where certain quadratic tallies of derivatives fit together in a consistent, harmonious way. Kinetic tallies built from velocities, curvature tallies built from gradients, interaction tallies built from products of fields and their derivatives, these are all added and compared. The paths that reality actually follows are those where this overall pattern of tallies is internally coherent. We keep walking, and the tree continues to refine. At every level, there are new possible questions about phi. At every level, there are more precise ways to describe what is happening. But we also see that we do not need to carry every detail all the time. For many stories, the thick branches are enough. A simple fall, a basic orbit, a gentle wave can be told with only first and second derivatives. Higher levels are there when we need them, but the language is merciful. It allows compression, it allows summary, it allows us to walk with only as much detail as the situation demands. Eventually, as we climb, the branches become too fine to distinguish individually. They blur into a luminous haze. This is where mathematicians speak of the infinite jet bundle, J infinity of phi, the full space of phi and all of its derivatives to every order. You can think of it as the complete dictionary of every possible local way something can change. Every entry in that dictionary is a tiny stencil, a small pattern of behavior that could, in principle, occur at some point in the universe. The infinite tree is just our visual way of walking through that dictionary, from the simplest entries to the most elaborate ones. Standing here, near the canopy, we can turn slowly and look back down. We see that every phenomenon we know has its own path through this structure. A falling leaf follows one trail, touching certain branches and ignoring others. A spinning galaxy explores a different combination, leaning heavily on gravitational curvature, centrifugal balance, and slow rotational motion. A heartbeat is another story again, written in cyclic activation of tissue, pressure gradients, flow balances, and electrical waves. A conscious thought is a still more intricate path through the tree, involving waves of neural activation, complex network topology, and cascades of adaptive feedback. From up here, the infinite forest of possibilities does not feel chaotic. It feels ordered. The branches know where they come from and where they lead. Every higher level presupposes the ones below. You cannot have jerk without acceleration, acceleration without velocity, velocity without position, position without phi. You cannot have a vortex without a velocity field, or a standing wave without a relationship between omega and k. The tree is recursive. Its parts echo its whole. Its structure is self-similar at many scales. Now, because we are honest, we must acknowledge something important. The claim that this entire tree, from root to canopy, is the complete framework for describing reality is not a mystical statement. It is a scientific one. It could be wrong. The way to find out is to test it ruthlessly. We test it by building models that use this grammar and asking whether those models succeed or fail. We test it by searching for phenomena that resist every attempt at derivative-based description. We test it by watching whether predictions improve when we add the next natural derivative, or whether they stubbornly refuse to converge. If, across many domains, from optics to fluids, from materials to plasmas, we find that climbing the tree systematically improves our predictions, then the picture gains strength. If, in some corner of reality, we find behavior that cannot be expressed as a field and its derivatives, or where derivative ladders never converge even in smooth, well-behaved systems, then we have discovered the limits of this tree, and we will need a new map. The Holophase framework does not fear this outcome. In a sense, it invites it, because a framework that is not vulnerable to being wrong is not really part of science. As we stand beneath the canopy, I invite you to notice how this picture of the infinite tree mirrors other trees you know. It looks like the tree of scientific knowledge, where basic measurements are the roots, simple laws are the thick branches, and specialized theories are the outer twigs. It looks like the tree of a skill, where basic movements are the roots, combined techniques are the branches, and artistic expression is the canopy. It even looks like the tree of a life, where simple experiences at the base give rise to habits, beliefs, insights, and eventually to a unique expression of wisdom. These are analogies, not identities, but they are not accidents. They reflect something real. Whenever complexity grows in a coherent way, it tends to develop a layered structure, from coarse to fine, from simple to intricate. The infinite tree of phi is the deepest version of that structure, the one that lives not just in our minds and cultures, but in the very way reality itself unfolds. Now, let us give a little more attention to curvature, because it is one of the most important second order ideas in the entire tree. Curvature is what tells you whether you are in a valley, on a ridge, or on a flat plane. It tells light how to bend through glass and tells planets how to orbit around stars. In the Holophase language, curvature is simply the rate at which the gradient changes. Yet, from that simple definition comes the entire architecture of lenses, mirrors, antennas, and orbits. When you put on glasses, you are literally placing carefully designed curvature in front of your eyes. When you use a satellite dish, you are using a surface whose curvature has been tuned so that waves arriving from far away focus onto one small receiver. Curvature is a way the universe sculpts phi, to make certain stories possible and to forbid others. At the level of fluids, the second order structures of divergence, shear, and vorticity are what give water and air their personality. A calm lake has almost no vorticity and very little divergence. The flow is smooth and simple. A turbulent river has intense, tangled vorticity, tiny whirlpools nested within larger ones, shear layers where fast and slow water slide past each other, and pockets where water converges and dives downward. A hurricane is a masterpiece written on these branches. Strong negative pressure gradients, enormous vorticity, organized bands of convection where moist air rises and drier air sinks. When you look at a satellite image of a storm, you are looking straight at a paragraph in the holophase language written in curls, bands, and spirals of second order derivatives. Climbing higher again, we can see how higher order derivatives become vital wherever precision, smoothness, or stability matters. In engineering, when a robot arm moves to pick up a fragile object, it is not enough to control just its position and velocity. Abrupt changes in acceleration, high jerk, can shake the object or stress the joints. So the trajectory is planned so that not only acceleration, but the rate of change of acceleration changes smoothly. This is simply language about third and fourth time derivatives. In structural engineering, when designers worry about buckling, flutter, or resonance, they are really asking detailed questions about how curvature and its own variations behave under load. In all of these cases, stepping up one more rung in the derivative ladder turns a crude, jerky motion into a graceful, stable one. We can also pause to notice how feedback loops weave paths across the tree. Imagine a thermostat controlling the temperature in a room. The temperature is a value of phi. The rate at which it changes is related to omega. The thermostat measures that value and decides whether to turn the heater on or off. That decision changes the derivative structure of phi again. Over time, the system settles into a pattern where temperature oscillates gently around the target value. This is a small domestic example of how constraint chains and feedback cross multiple branches, linking values, velocities, and accelerations into a self-correcting story. Scale this idea up, and you get ecosystems regulating their populations, economies adjusting supply and demand, and even planetary climates stabilizing or destabilizing over long periods. When we look at living systems through the lens of the infinite tree, another layer of beauty appears. A heartbeat is not only an omega, it is a richly structured wave in time and space. Electrical activation sweeps through the tissue, a moving front in a phi field defined on the geometry of the heart. The muscle fibers contract with carefully shaped timing, creating pressure gradients that push blood forward in pulses. Valves open and close at specific phases. Higher order derivatives determine how quickly the heart responds to stress and how smoothly it returns to rest. The heart is literally a physical poem written in derivatives of phi, recited about once every second of your life. The brain, too, lives high in the tree. Electrical and chemical phi fields dance across networks of neurons connected in complex topologies. Waves of activation move through sensory maps, gradients of inhibition shape the flow of signals, and recurrent feedback loops stabilize certain patterns as memories or thoughts. Even if we do not yet know the exact equations, we can be confident that whatever those equations are, they live somewhere on this tree. They will be built from values and derivatives of fields defined over the brain's structure, respecting the same basic grammar of time, space, and motion. This gives us a quiet kind of hope that the language we are learning is not just for stars and fluids, but also for neurons and ideas. At the scale of societies, the analogy becomes more metaphorical but still meaningful. Flows of information, money, and people behave in ways that often resemble physical flows. There are gradients of opportunity, peaks of influence, boundaries of culture and law. Ideas propagate with velocities, sometimes slow and diffuse, sometimes explosively fast. The acceleration of technological change, the momentum of social movements, the pressure of population growth, these familiar phrases hint that our intuitive language is already trying to capture derivative structure. The Holophase framework offers a disciplined way to think about these analogies, helping us see where they are illuminating and where they break down. As we reimagine all of these examples under the branches of the infinite tree, something subtle shifts in our sense of belonging. We begin to feel that humans are not standing outside the forest looking in. We are part of the forest. Our bodies, our senses, our thoughts, our cultures are all intricate subtrees growing from the same root of phi. The laws that govern distant galaxies and tiny particles are the same laws that quietly govern the warmth of a hand, the curve of a smile, the rhythm of a spoken sentence. Literacy in this language is not about domination or control. It is about intimacy, about feeling at home in the structure of existence. Now we begin our descent, which is really another way of saying that we bring our attention back down the trunk, towards the world we can touch. As we walk down, we can feel how the air changes. The thin, abstract atmosphere of the canopy thickens into the more familiar air of everyday physics. Third and fourth order derivatives fade into the background hum. Second order effects like acceleration and curvature return to center stage. First order effects like velocity and gradient feel solid again, like the bark of the trunk. At last, we return to the root. We stand once more before phi itself, silent, undifferentiated, waiting. We understand it differently now. When we first met phi, it seemed like an abstract symbol. Now it feels like the deep, continuous something out of which every story is carved. We know that within phi lie all possible trees, all possible branches, all possible sentences that could ever be written about reality. Before we close, let us remember where this walk fits in our larger journey. The Holophase language is the one field phi, and its infinite tower of derivatives. In Episode 7, we set ourselves the ambitious goal of becoming literate in that language. Step by step, we did it. We learned the alphabet of omega, k, and v. We learned the grammar of constraint chains and balance. We learned to read phenomena as sentences, to translate between human descriptions and phi descriptions, and to compose our own sentences. Today, we have added one last piece, a clear, intuitive picture of the entire structure that underlies all of those skills. From now on, when you watch water swirling down a drain, when you hear the hum of a refrigerator, when you feel your own heartbeat slowing after a run, you can imagine where that little moment lives in the infinite tree. You can picture the branch of first derivatives, the branch of oscillations, the branch of flow and curvature, the small cluster of higher order twigs that give it a unique texture. You can sense that this one small event is a local verse in a much larger poem that phi is constantly reciting. This is the true gift of our final walk. It is not just knowledge, it is orientation. It is the feeling that, however complex the universe becomes, there is a coherent structure behind it, a language you know how to approach, a tree whose paths you have walked before. You may never need to compute a fourth order derivative in your life, but you will know, in your bones, that if a phenomenon demands it, the language is there. The branch exists. The tree can carry it. As we end this part, I invite you to hold one last image. Imagine standing in a forest at dusk. The trunks are dark silhouettes. The canopy above is a soft, endless weave. A light wind moves through the leaves and they whisper. If you listen carefully, that whisper is Phi, speaking through its derivatives, telling the stories of stars and rivers and minds and lives. You now have the ears to hear it. In our final parts of this chapter, we will gently turn from language to memory. We will ask how the universe keeps track of its own stories, how past configurations of Phi leave traces that shape future ones. But wherever we go next, remember this walk. Remember the infinite tree. Remember that every step you take in your own life is also a small movement of Phi, a tiny path along one branch of the greatest tree there is. Salam, and peace be upon you.